Okay.
All right, welcome. This is the Whitman Finance Committee meeting. Today is Tuesday, November 17th, 2020. We're coming to you virtually through the Zoom platform. Our agenda today is we have reserve fund stands at $49,647. Public forum is temporarily suspended due to the COVID-19 pandemic. If anybody wishes from the public to get a hold of the Finance Committee, you can certainly send an email to me, R.Anderson, at whitman/ma.gov. So today, under new business, we do have budget manager meeting with the fire department at 7:15. The Board of Health meeting that was scheduled to be 7:45 has been postponed to January at the end of our meeting cycle. So under old business, we do subcommittee reports, and we'll talk a little bit about the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District assessment, and if time allows, a little about non-mandated busing. So communications, we have none. The next meeting following this one, we have November 24th, December 1st, December 8th, December 15th, and January 5th. That will conclude our budget cycle meetings with department managers, so on January 5th. So the next meetings are pretty important to be able to get the information directly from the budget managers as we take a look at fiscal 22 budget. So before we get started on our regular order of business here, I would like to introduce John New. John is our newest member, filling the uncompleted term of our recently moved on Finance Committee member. And so John, I'll go around the board here and introduce John Galvin, Kathleen
Hey, Jen.
Rosemary Connolly, Chuck Colby,
Hi, John.
and Ken Lytle is our accountant. As I mentioned, three of our members are not in attendance right now. We have Ralph Mitchell, Al Cafferty, and Dave Cordero, who is the vice chair of the Finance Committee. So, John, welcome. Thank you for putting in your papers and being put on to the committee. Would you like to give a little bit of information?
Sure. I've lived in the town for 44 years, over 44 years at this point. I worked for the Social Security Administration for 45 years plus before retiring this past spring. To put it in perspective, when you hear what my background is with the town, it will kind of fit when I say it's kind of ancient history. But I did spend 3 years on the Finance Committee a number of years ago. I moved on, receiving an appointment by the selectmen to the, at the time, Whitman School Committee. And at that time, it came with a seat on the Regional High School Committee. I spent a total of 10 years on the different school committees, finishing up on the regional, overall regional school committee. My seat was one of the first to be eliminated. I got along very well with the folks who were remaining and who I would have had to have run against. So I chose not to do that at that time. And I've done volunteer efforts like running the Whitman-Hanson Kingston Youth Hockey Program for a number of years. And I'm looking forward to working with you folks. And Rick has already started to supply me with a ton of reading material. So it's all good. Thank you.
All right, great. Well, John, like I said, anything you need, don't hesitate to reach out. Have you got your email set up yet for with the technology director? Have you gotten through?
No, I didn't hear back from him today.
Okay. Yeah, so he's a busy guy. You know, we get a lot of departments that he covers. So Rosemary is in the queue too, waiting for some help for her email. So you're in good company. Ralph, just want to introduce to you, Ralph, John Noon. He's the newest member of our committee.
All right, welcome aboard.
Thanks, Ralph.
Ralph's one of our senior members. He's been on this committee longer than I think anybody here. Maybe Chuck and he are about the same. Right?
Yeah, I think we came the same,
Yeah, about the
same time.
So a wealth of experience. You know, like I said, everybody. Just give you a quick little thing. I like to say that this is a 9-member committee. 9 voices will be heard at all times. So if there's anything that you want to, you know, say, please do not hesitate to chime in at any point. Like I said, 9 members are the composition of this committee, and not one member has any more say than any other, despite any titles that they may hold. So we encourage you to get as much information and watch some of the Zoom meetings. I don't know if you've seen some of the past ones to get some kind of perspective of, you know, the process.
I have.
Right. All right. So our meeting minutes from November 10th, Samantha, you're still working on those, so we'll move those to the next meeting. While we're waiting for the fire chief to come in for his presentation of his budget, we could probably do a quick discussion of our subcommittee report. So Dave Cadero is the chairman of the Building Facility Capital Expenditure Committee. Dave is not in attendance tonight. The next one on that agenda that you should have gotten is the Regional Agreement Amendment Committee. That is one that I sit on, and there are no meetings scheduled. Hopefully there will be some soon. And from the Middle School Building Committee, John sits on that. John, anything to report on that committee?
No, we have not met since our last meeting. Our next scheduled meeting, here comes Tim Greno. Our next scheduled meeting is December 7th. It's a Monday, so.
Okay. So also on old business, we like to keep a place setter for the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District. Kathleen Otina is our liaison to the school district. And Kathleen, do you want to make some report about your reaching out to the superintendent?
You want to do that now, or do you want to hear from the chief first and then?
Sure.
Yeah.
Welcome, Chief. How are you?
How are you?
Good.
How's everybody tonight?
Good to see you.
Good to see everybody.
So, Tim, one of our new members, John Noon, you'll see is in attendance tonight for his very first meeting.
Welcome, John.
Yep, so we now are a 9-member committee again. So,
All right.
so like I said, John is here in his first meeting. So what we'll do is we'll have you just give a overview of your budget. If you want to start right out with that, that'd be great.
Sure. Turn myself up a little bit here so I can hear you better. So I submitted to you my line items from article number 2, which you should have in front of you for fiscal year 22. You know, it's pretty cut and dry. It's pretty self-explanatory. The line 130, which is my line, is I'm under a contract right now until July 1st of 22 or 23, whatever it is. It calls for 2%. The administrative deputy spot is in there this year. For those of you who may or may not know, that position has been put off for 2 years because of budget issues. The union agreed to push that off until July 1st of this year. So that deputy chief spot becomes a day spot on July 1st of 2021. With this COVID stuff, my mind's a mess. And so he will become a day position. And what that does is that gives us a full-time administrative deputy fire chief who is out of the union, who is part of the management team. And he's also in charge of fire prevention, like what he does right now. It's a position that is well overdue. I think that we're one of the only towns on the South Shore that does not have a day deputy the size of us to help me with all of the like administrative duties and the fire prevention and everything else. So that's due to come to our fruition on July 1st. So that's why the budget increase is what it is. If you look at the all other services line, that on that line is actually level funded at with a $45,000 like increase. All those increases are contractual obligations. There's step raises, there's increase in vacation time, there are there's like college steps, and that's what all of the contractual obligations add up to. None of their salaries were like increased more than what they are right now, at the request of, I think it was your committee and the town administrator like at the time. Clerical, you know, she's non-union. I put her in for I'm like 2%, just like I do I do on like every other year. Other than that, the only other increase you'll see is the regional dispatch. I think we're in a second of a 3-year contract. That's now at $80,000 this year, which is a $10,000 like increase. I think you'll see that over the life of the contract, it was $10,000 a year to bring us up to the $80,000 number. What I just need to comment about that to all of the new members and like some of the more like seasoned ones. What regional dispatch is a real quick like synopsis of it is back 10, 15 years ago, Mass State Police out of the Middleborough Barracks answered our 911 calls. And then they would transfer the call to either fire or police. As time came on, Mass State Police said, yeah, we're not going to do this anymore. You need to figure something out. Both fire and like Whitman Police were not in the position to basically take this over because of all the training involved. There's all kinds of emergency, like medical, like dispatch stuff involved. If you call up and you're having chest pain, somebody has to stay on the phone with you. There's just no staffing. At the same time, the fire department was seeing a fairly large increase in our day-to-day services. And more often than not, the fire station was being left empty with nobody back here to answer the phones or radios. And on average, way back, like when we did it, I believe that we were averaging somewhere around 2 to 3 times a day that this place was left empty, in excess of half hour, 45 minutes, sometimes like 2 hours. So when state police said no longer, we went looking for who could answer our 911 calls and who could meet state law and who was capable of doing those like services. And that's when we partnered up with Holbrook at the time. They were one of the only regional centers open at the time, and they were building. So we signed on with Holbrook to just do our 911 calls and to take over minor dispatching for us, like when the fire station was left empty. That blossomed into giving them dispatch fully because it's a much more efficient like operation. They handle all of our calls. They dispatch us. They make all of like necessary like contacts that like we need like from the field, and we're getting it all for $80,000. Other communities who are part of the regional centers are paying upwards of $150,000 to $250,000 a year. The reason it is only $80,000 for the town of Whitman is because they take our share of state 911 funds, which we wouldn't see anyways. So they're getting $100,000 plus from state 911 to do our dispatching for fire, and to like answer our 911 lines. So prior to them taking it, you were paying a firefighter anywhere from $80,000 to $85,000 to $90,000 to $100,000 a year times 4 shifts to man the phones and radios here. So it's a very cost-effective system for us to use, and it works extremely well. Like right now, I'm in my office. The fire station is empty because we have a rollover up on Route 18. Holbrook has the town covered, and that's what helps me sleep at night. Is I know that no matter when you dial like 911, like no matter what is going on, somebody's gonna answer that phone or that radio. So that's like my explanation on that. Like other than that, Mr. Chairman, you've got the budget. It's an overall like increase of 194,663. It's about 5.1%. If you need me to be at 5%, then I'm sure that I can tweak something to come down to 5% for you.
Okay. Before I open up the question, just a few things, Chief. Did you submit the employee list and salary information?
I did. It's on the bottom of that. Yep.
Right.
Yep. It's right underneath that Article 2 sheet.
Okay, well, that same Article 2 sheet, okay. Does anybody have questions for the chief regarding the budget aspect? John?
Just a question. I have a couple questions actually, but a question on Holbrook. Is there other regional dispatches out there? Didn't Duxbury just create one, and did Hanson go with them? Are they similarly, is it a similar setup, or is that totally?
There are 5 different regional centers now operating in southeastern Massachusetts. There's Holbrook, which was an original. There's the Shrek, which is in Hingham, which does Hingham, Hull, Cohasset, and Norwell. There's the Rock in like Duxbury, which does Duxbury, Hanson, I want to say Rochester and Plimpton. There's a southeastern one that does Foxborough and Easton and stuff to that effect. And then we have Holbrook that does Whitman Fire, Abington Fire, Rockland Fire and Police, Holbrook Fire and Police, and Canton, and I'm forgetting one other one. And they're about to do a ribbon cutting, probably the 1st of December towards the middle, on their brand new, I think it's a $6 million building over there.
Right. I thought I had heard something about that. Yeah. So
Holbrook works so well for us because we work daily with Abington and we work daily with Rockland, and we do with Hanson also. But having Holbrook run the con, it's seamless, like operation here. And if we were to pick the switch, like quite honestly, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, and state 911 would look at it and say, yeah, no, we're not moving.
all right. I have a couple questions. Can I keep going, Rick, or you want to let
Go ahead,
somebody
you-
else? All right. So the other question I have is, I am correct in saying that the union contract is only a 1-year contract, so it'll end in fiscal 22.
June 30th.
I mean, fiscal the end of this year.
Right.
So none of your numbers reflect any union negotiations, obviously, because they haven't happened yet.
Correct. Yep.
So impacting this budget could be whatever negotiation results come out when that union budget is negotiated, correct?
Correct. And I believe that's
we
what
could,
they want
we
us to
could see a 2% increase on, if that's the way it's negotiated, we could see a 2% increase in the salary lines there. How much would that be approximately? Do you know?
Yeah, let me, I'm just working.
If it was, I'm just saying, if it was a 2% union agreement.
It could be a level funded contract too, right?
It could be. I'm just trying to get what it might, if it's negotiated at 2%, I think that's what went through last year when they negotiated it. What would that look like? Just so that we know what the budget could be if that's, I mean, negotiations go anyway, they can go crazy sometimes.
Right. I think you're talking somewhere probably around another $40,000 to $45,000.
Okay.
Have the numbers, but I have a lot of spreadsheets here, and I don't want to waste your time by digging.
Yeah, all right.
Because we do have that 2% calculated out on one of my other spreadsheets. I just, it's 7:15 at night trying to look through spreadsheets.
I know it was like 55,000 or something this year, or 58,000 this past year when it went through, but I don't know what that all included. I'm not privy to all that information.
Well, where the other 45,000 is already going in because of contractual like obligations for the budget anyways. So I would expect a 2% increase on the salaries is probably going to be right around that $45,000 to $50,000 range at the most.
Okay.
Because I've already calculated in all of the contractual like obligations except for
Okay.
2%.
I hear you.
So if they get a 2%, that's that's going to be added in. And generally, like I said, it's between 40 and 50,000.
So included in that 55 or 58,000 last year, included all those steps that you've already got in there already. All right, that makes sense. Okay. All right.
Okay, and just Rosemary, did you want to follow up?
I had a question. How many years was it delayed, the position, the daytime? It was pushed off a few years, correct?
Put off for 2 years, yes.
For 2 years, okay, so.
For 2 years. I can just so I can give you the importance, if you will bear with me, like Mr. Chairman, I've got a very brief note that I can read you, like from my deputy chief who does fire prevention right now, that he just sent me on October 17th, which goes right to that line item.
Sure.
He writes, "Dear Chief, I am writing you to express and officially document my concerns in regards to my position as the department's fire prevention officer. It has been a little more than a year now since I was promoted to deputy chief of this department and assumed the duties and responsibilities of fire prevention officer. As you know, fire prevention is the core of public safety and is vital to the well-being of residents and business owners of the town of Whitman. I also know that you share the same concerns as me, and that my capacity to perform these duties is severely restricted by the 4 to 5 hours each week that I am like allotted. He comes in on Tuesdays and works Tuesday mornings. I'm with Bob Curran for 4 hours, and that's all that the budget allows him to do. My greatest concern is that due to these constraints, I fear that I may not find potential hazards that could result in severe consequences. We both agree that to properly and effectively perform an inspection of every commercial property and multifamily residence in this town, and to assist you in daily operations of this department, my position as deputy chief should be a full-time day spot as it is with the majority of the other fire departments in the area. So you know, like my deputy is out there, my officers are out there like every day responding on medical calls and fire calls, and quite frankly, more often than not, when they walk into a commercial property or a multifamily like residency, they find fire code issues, and there are many of them that we just can't follow up on because we just don't have the time to do it. And it's, for example, I have a commercial property in town right now. His fire alarm system has been out of service, I think, since July. We started dealing with him in July on it, and because of other duties and stuff like that, we're just dealing with it again now this week. So just to show you the importance of what that position is.
Okay, and then just backing up a little bit to your salary, just wanted to note that the budget mailing, and I'm just for continuity, I am mentioning this to every department head that comes before the committee for this budget cycle. The mailing did specify that you are requested to level fund salary positions to the expected work hours for fiscal 22. So as of this,
I did except for my, I did that except for my admin, but I have a contract and my contract calls for 2%.
okay.
Yeah.
All right,
So
further
that's the
questions?
only one I didn't, like Lisa, I gave her like 2%. It's $892 just because I always put them for 2%,
Okay,
Uh,
but I get it.
all right, and John,
Yeah, I do have one more question. I just forwarded everybody an email of, and I did include you too, Chief, of a 5-year analysis that I have done on appropriations close to revenue at the end of each year and return. And Chief, in end of fiscal 19, the fire department returned, when the account was closed out, returned almost $180,000 back to the general fund. In 2018, it was almost $200,000 were returned. And in 2017, about $140,000 were returned. This year, at the end of 2020, 17,500 were returned. Basically, your budget's been going up 3 or 4%, and over the last 3 years, you've returned a lot of money that was unspent. This year, that changed dramatically. I'm just curious if you could comment on why so much more money was spent this year out of your budget than had been in the past 3 years.
I'd love to. I'd love to.
Good.
So as you know, over the past couple years, it's been very tough for this town to meet its Article 2 obligations. My department and all of the other town departments have cut their like budgets voluntarily, substantially. Over the past, I believe it was the past 2 budget cycles. Mine is to the tune right now of, I reduced my budget, I think somewhere in there at $240,000 like over the past 3 years. Fluff or padding is not a term I like to use because like we're in public safety. We have to prepare for the unknowns. I have to prepare for snowstorms. I have to prepare for hurricanes and long duration like incidents and stuff like that. That money that was turned back in is money that if we had a storm of 2015 again, where we had a blizzard like every week, and we staffed up here from 5 members a shift to 8 or 10 members a shift, like on a frequent basis, because of road access and like patient access and stuff. That's what that money is all about. You know, we haven't had rough winters. We haven't had a hurricane. We haven't had tropical storms. We've had some kicks like here and there with some windstorms like coming through, but we haven't seen the storms that we've seen in the past where we have had to upstaff here, you know, to 5 or 10 people a shift for 5-6 days straight, stuff like that. So the reason that those numbers were turned back in those years is because we just didn't have the storms. If we have a rough winter this year, if I have a blizzard like every year, I don't have enough money in my budget to do it. Because what we did over the past 2 to 3 years is those budget reductions that we gave back, that ate up my storm coverages. And if you remember back when I presented our budgets to on the Board of Selectmen last year, and I believe the like year before, I specifically explained to them that we no longer have sufficient storm coverages like in our budget. So, you know, like historically, John, if we have a blizzard that's coming or a tropical storm that's coming, like we look at a couple different factors. Let's say that it's a January blizzard. It's going to be 30 to 31 degrees with high winds. That's going to be a wet, heavy snow. It's going to take trees down. It's going to take poles down. And the town is probably going to be without power for 4 to 5 days. I staff up like those storms. If we're going to get 12, 14, 18, or 24 like inches of wet snow, I'm running 12, 14, 20 guys like out of this building for 3 or 4 days straight. And they're running calls the whole time. I've got 3 engines on the road, 2 shift commanders, and we're like banging out calls. I don't have the money to do that anymore. And I explained that to other Board of Selectmen that if we have a rough winter, it's going to be stacking calls. And you may have a ton of down lines across the town that we can't get to because we just don't have that money. So that's why that much money was given back on those years, is because those were basically like those are basically I'm like storm lines. Also IOD, so injured on duty. We cover person for person. I've got 1 member out right now. He's out on IOD. I had 2 members or 3 members out last year. That's why only $17,000 was turned back in.
Okay, that's the answer. That's the answer I was looking for.
Yeah, because
Okay.
I had 3 guys out. I think 1 was a back, 1 was a knee, and I forget what the 3rd one was. And they were out for 4 or 5 months at a time.
Okay. All right. Because, you know, mentioning the storms the year that just ended, fiscal 20, we actually didn't even use all the snow and ice funds. So that did, you know, but if there were cases like that, that's helpful to know that was the case. So
that's the money that we have in the budget, or that we used to have in the budget for those unplanned events. Like we budget X amount for IOD coverage. It might be $15,000 or like $20,000. That's going to get me through probably 2 months of like somebody like being out, like maybe 3. But when I have 2 or 3 guys out, you know, like I just had a guy come back to work. He was out of work for 8 months, I think. He came back, worked light duty for 3 months, and now he's back to full duty. And now we have a guy out that got hurt a few weeks ago because he got kicked on a call. So, you know, that's why those numbers were what they were. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
Yeah, that makes more sense than the snow removal from last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Okay, Chief, just want to follow up a little bit on the budget, overall budget. So, as you know, we're still in a little bit of a crisis here in the town, and I think it wasn't all that long ago, if you recall, we sent $500,000 to Hanson to fund some of their departments last year. So there has to be some implications to our budget and this fiscal year. Obviously, we're trying to close a deficit for what we have projected already.
Right.
So where, if you had to, and I know you mentioned, you know, lowering beyond 5.1% if you're looking for 1%, 0.1%, or what could you think of in your department budget that would be something that you could perhaps move a little?
Rick, I'm talking with what we've already like cut or like reduced like over the past like 3 years. I'm talking staffing levels. Like we would be in the spot where like for those that don't know, we run 6 firefighters a shift. It's 5 firefighters and 1 officer. We staff the shift commander, we staff an engine company, we staff a ladder, which cross trains on the first out ambulance, and then the engine crew staffs the second out ambulance, and that's what makes up our 6 people. We would be looking at dropping shift strength from 6 down to 5 or 4, which this town just can't sustain.
Okay. All right, further questions for the chief?
I think Ken raised his hand. Ken, did you raise your hand? Oh, you're scratching.
Scratching his chin.
You're scratching.
He's just throwing his hands up and discuss generally.
I have a couple other comments. I watched your meeting last week. If I could have a second, I think that there might be some angst out there regarding the COVID ambulance. If you would like me to explain that and hopefully put that to bed so you guys can sleep restful tonight.
Any alleviation of angst is greatly appreciated. Go ahead.
So there was several, if you watched the capital advisory meeting last week, there was a whole host of untruthful statements made, and very correct statements. The deal on the COVID ambulance is look at the Collins Center report. The Collins Center report is specific that it calls in fiscal 21, I think it is now, to refurbish and remount an ambulance. It doesn't say to purchase a new ambulance. It says to refurbish and remount. That is totally different from buying an ambulance, and it's not on the capital plan to buy an ambulance. And there were statements made that we spent CARES money to pay down the capital, and we can't do that, and we're not going to get reimbursed, and nothing could be further from the truth. I need you guys to know that myself and Ken and Mary Beth work very closely. We have since Frank retired on CARES purchases. And we don't purchase and we don't push anything forward without speaking with the county first and making sure that it's in their ballpark of what they're going to reimburse. So back when Frank was here, Frank and I discussed, because he had an extraordinary amount of money left in the CARES stuff, and I was taking the ambulance out of service 2-3 hours, like sometimes 4, 5, 6 times a day to have a decon. We said, why don't we buy an ambulance? Let's buy a COVID specific ambulance. It has a larger HVAC system. It has non-porous counters. It's got all of the nuts and bolts in it to protect our people like from COVID. So the town of Kingston bought an ambulance. I reached out to the town of Kingston. I said, what did you do and how did you do it? They explained to me how they did it. I reached out to Tom O'Brien. I said, this is what we're thinking of doing. He said, sounds perfect, go with it. So there was never a doubt in any of our minds that we weren't going to get reimbursed for this ambulance. It's just a slow process. And I believe, Ken, that Tom told us the 24th of this month we should be seeing something, we're hoping.
23rd, I think, next week.
next week. So, like I want to put all that angst like to bed that, that we just went off and bought an ambulance and, like you're going to have to like come up with that money. Like I would bet my salary next week that they're going to cut us a check for $298,000 because I get the verbal up and down from the county that this was okay to do. And that's what Ken does. That's what Mary Beth does. And that's what I do. We work together to make these purchases, and we try to make sure, or like we definitely like make sure that anything that the three of us push forward is approved for reimbursement, because we know that to pay the CARES bills, it comes out of this year's budget. And if it's not going to get like reimbursed, then we got issues. So nobody is more financially frugal than the three of us, like when it comes to the CARES Act, especially Ken and Mary Beth.
So
Because I
just-
have a tendency to want everything.
Right. Just following up from our meeting, our concern wasn't specifically to the ambulance. Our concern was the general expenditures and the echoing the concern of the treasurer collector for
Right.
having so much hanging out there. That was more or less the fight. I don't know what happened at the facilities capital committee, but
Well-
our meeting, our concern was generally for the amount of reimbursables that are
Exactly.
still hanging out there.
Exactly.
Not specifically the ambulance.
No, and we had that discussion back, I don't know, Ken, probably back in October or September, I think it was. No, it was October, with Mary Beth about what is she comfortable with putting out. And she said from day one, let's get the ambulance money back, and let's be set to spend another $300,000 to $400,000 and take those steps that way. And we were all fine with it. Those two are right on top of things, and like you need not be overly like concerned, because one thing that Mary Beth is not going to do is overextend us on revenues.
Right, okay. John,
Chief, would this plan still be to move forward with refurbishing the ambulance that's in the capital plan for fiscal '22? That still will happen, right?
That article, the county suggested I still put that article forward, so I will submit that article.
I mean, because that's part of the recommendations from Madden that we put together 150,000 each year.
Right.
And we did that last year. So
Right.
adding another 150,000 this year would give you basically enough or close anyway.
To have that 2008 ambulance done. So
Right.
my question, I guess, to your committee is also on that is back on the Madden report. The discussion that Frank and I had afterwards, and I thought I had with this committee, but maybe not. We were going to label that account the reserve for appropriation, or the reserve fire department capital purchase account, or something like that. So it wasn't specifically tied to the ambulances. And the reason behind that was that if we bought if we did the refurb on the 2008 next, like this fiscal year, and then 2 years down the road, we had, I think the 2012 is due. At some point, you'll have a 10-year lap in there where the ladder truck is a 2004, that's $1 million truck. And it was my understanding that the thought process on that account was to put 150 in there a year and let that build. So when we needed to buy a $700,000 pumping engine or $1 million ladder truck, we weren't borrowing, we weren't bonding, we had the money in the account to do it. And the article, for whatever reason, didn't get worded that way. And I'm looking to see what your appetite is to reword that article this year for that purpose.
I think the direction of this committee is to move forward with the recommendations as they're spelled out in the Madden report. And, if we're looking to change the wording for the ambulance account, we're looking to bring it back to where it was, before it went into the general fund, right? I mean.
No, I'm just talking about the 150, Rick, is like, all I'm talking about is what that money cannot be used for.
Right.
Instead of tying your hands to it can only be used on an ambulance, because once COVID goes away and the vaccinations are out and everybody's vaccinated, our numbers are down to 0, that COVID ambulance then becomes a town asset and runs like as a frontline ambulance.
Absolutely.
So,
Oh, I look forward to that.
so we'll have 3 ambulances that are within 5 to 6 years of age. So if you're going to keep putting 150,000 into that account, like which that calls for, at some point, there's going to be so much money in that account. You're going to probably buy like 2 ambulances, like at the same time. Great, in 10 years from now. But if you have to like replace this ladder truck or the 1990 pump that's an $800,000 like replacement, one would think that account would be where you may want to go to fund that purchase, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think it definitely bears taking a look at. I think based on the COVID, appropriations to that account may get modified just because of the fact that, there are other funding sources through COVID that we've obviously
Right.
utilized. So instead of continuing to build it up and changing the use, we could probably look at limiting how much we put in.
Right.
Is it specific to only the ambulances or all vehicles from the?
Rosemary, it is my understanding in discussions with Frank, it was supposed to be worded for all vehicles, but the final wording ended up as ambulances only.
But I don't think that was its intent at all in the Madden report. That was someone's suggestion, but I think it's worth going back to the Madden report and taking a look at the specific idea for taking away the reserve for appropriation ambulance account was a specific, the idea for that had a purpose.
Right. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
It was to put the money into the general fund, and it wasn't to earmark a specific amount for fire department purchases going forward. Right. So like I said, I think we just have to take a look at that and look at either modifying the amount that's funded or, as you said, doing something to change the language.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that there were some questions last week in the Armory. Does anybody have any questions on what that building's used for or what your thoughts are is what you need?
Well, one of the questions I had is how many years has the Armory expense line been within the fire department budget?
Oh, it's been there since I've been chief for 13 years. It's been there ever since that. Several years ago, I want to say at least 10, if not 12 years ago, the Board of Selectmen voted to put that building under my jurisdiction, mainly because it's pretty much our annex because we are out of room here. I have probably $1.6 million worth of fire apparatus that sit in that building. Each piece of apparatus is in service, some primary, some reserve. Like the brush truck is over there, the heavy rescue truck is over there, the reserve ambulance is over there, the backup engine's over there, and so on. It also serves the front room is the firefighters' weight room because they lost their weight room here in 2000 due to the renovations. It also houses the firefighters' SCBA training maze in the old gun range, and we have other training props over there. So the building is used daily by us, like for everything that's going on over there.
Well, there's no doubt that we need to maintain that building for sure. And I know the roof has been something that's been hanging out there, but that's something where you're going to present for the Building Facility and Capital Expenditure Committee.
Yeah, I sent Dave the quote. I had a quote down on the roof, I think like a month ago. It was about $35,000 to replace the asphalt shingle roof on that building. Which every time that we have a high windstorm, I have the roofer out to put 2 bundles of shingles back on it.
Yep. All
There were
right.
2 questions for
Go
that
ahead.
building for me. Were we going to take the offices and put them in about 3 years ago? Did that happen? Or is it just the weight rooms?
No, at one point, Rosemary, I spoke with the board about space issues here. And I had done a draft article for about, I don't know, I think it was $300,000 to $400,000 to move all of the administrative offices from this building over there and then open the building up more. At the time, we were just starting to get into that financial crunch, and there wasn't really an appetite to bring another building on board. So that building is heated. There's just no water. We have the water, shut down, and the guys just use the front room as their gym right now.
Okay, so that's no longer,
It's not on
Part
the
of the
agenda right
plan?
now, no.
no.
I've got,
Okay, because that was one of the reasons I wanted to, I think Al wanted to go in. And then, do we have other towns using that building, or is it just exclusively for Whitman? Are we using that with storage for vehicles that are used in other towns? And the reason we're asking is there a fee that's being paid
so
or
it's not
anything
other,
for this?
so it's not other towns. So right now, the DPW stores their sidewalk plows in there, like over the summer, and they put the street sweeper in there over the winter. The police department we put their little gem cars in there, and their speed limit board. Other than that, the Southeastern Mass Tech Rescue Structural Collapse Unit is in there. That is a partnership with all the fire departments in Plymouth County, and that is a structural collapse tractor trailer truck that we have access to. So it's a resource of us, but they store it there because it needed a home. So they also have stuff on our rescue truck, because our rescue truck is a primary response structural collapse vehicle for the county of Plymouth. So we staff that truck if there's a car in our house and they need structural support, if there's a building fire and there's guys trapped inside, or if there's structural issues, then our rescue truck responds with that tractor trailer for structural issues, trench collapse, high angle rescue, stuff like that.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that that we view having it here as a resource or an advantage. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Yep. And the only other truck that's in there is the Plymouth County Fire Chief's mobile command post, which we use more than anybody else. Our Black Lives Matter event here, we used it. Any major incidents, we use it. So those two vehicles that we keep in that building are basically our resources that we actually get to use more than the rest of the county Plymouth does.
Why do we use it more than anybody in Plymouth County, just out of curiosity?
Because the mobile command post rolls with the tech rescue team, and when you have possession of a vehicle like the mobile command post, it's $1 million vehicle. I've got immediate access to it, so it's a lot easier for me to pull it out and use it than it is for the town of Kingston to say, hey, send me the command post for this 2-hour incident, in the rain. I just use it more, if that makes sense. So it's a great.
So we don't have more incidences occurring within Whitman.
No, it's just what the vehicle gets utilized for. We use it for our own benefit.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else for the chief? Welcome, Lisa, to our meeting.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Okay, so Chief, thank you very much. Like I said, this is an additional meeting. I don't suspect we're going to meet multiple times with departments this particular budget cycle, but if there's any updates to your budget recommendations, we'll certainly make sure we get a hold of you before town meeting.
Very good. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good night. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, so that extinguishes the budget manager meeting for tonight. We move back into the old business. Kathleen, did you want to give an update on your communications with the superintendent?
I do. So I did reach out to Jeff Simonek, the superintendent, and asked him if he would like to meet with me to discuss the fiscal 22 budget, because I've sat through 2 school committee meetings with no mention of the school budget, other than an offhand remark that we don't know what next year is going to look like by one of the, not by Jeff, but by someone else in the administration. And my position is, well, you're going to have all the 3,000 kids and many hundreds of teachers who have to be paid, and kids have to be educated. So whatever the year is, there has to be a budget put in place. Jeff was reluctant to meet with me, as you said earlier, Rick, because he doesn't want to appear to be favoring Whitman over Hanson, since Hanson doesn't have a liaison to the schools. So where it stands right now is that I'm concerned, I'm pleased first that there's a 5% placeholder in the Whitman budget for an increase to the schools. And I've heard some rumblings from a number of different sources about Hanson can't afford what the 5% increase from Whitman implies in terms of if we calculate out what the budget impact would be to Hanson. Once again, we're hearing we can't afford it. And I want to be proactive as a finance committee and discuss what it's going to cost to educate the children, not what Whitman can afford or what Hanson can afford, but what does it cost to educate the kids? And then let the financial decision makers make that decision. But as we've said before, we've subsidized the fiscal 21 school budget to transition into the statutory method. My understanding was that Hanson was going to completely support transitioning into the statutory method in fiscal 22. I don't want it to be at the expense of, and we're only going to spend the minimum amount required. I have a projection of what it's going to cost Hanson to fund the schools if Whitman goes with the 5% placeholder, and it translates into about 12.7 million. Ours is going to be 6.1 million. That still is, it's a 14% increase to Hanson. Last year it was a 16% increase. It gets them to where they should be. So I don't want these discussions, these budget discussions, to start off with we can't afford it, or we can't afford to force Hanson into spending more money. They spent $1.3 million on capital expenditures at their October town meeting. $570,000 of which came from Whitman taxpayers, as far as I'm concerned. So I don't want us to backtrack on our commitment to the education of the children. If anything, these 2 years, this past year and the year going forward, as a teacher myself in a different school system, these kids are going to be missing out on stuff. They're not getting the education that they need, but teachers and administrators are doing the best they can to provide the education given the circumstances of COVID. So it's not going to take less money to educate these kids, it's going to take more. And so the public proclamations and behind the scenes gossiping about what people can afford has to stop, at least from my perspective. I'm pleased that the 5% placeholder is back in place. Jeff knows that we want him to attend our December 15th meeting, and he's planning on attending it to report on the school budget. I believe there's some sort of school budget report on tomorrow night's agenda, but I'm not sure the details of it. And so I plan to put together the same request I gave you last year about the documents I'd like to see from the school department. The class size and enrollment across the board by school and also by cohort, because they have in-person learning and then they have the remote learning. And it's my understanding that some of those remote classes at the first, second, third grade level are 40 kids, 40 children with one teacher learning at home. That's insane. So I want that information made available to us. And so I will give you a list, Rick, of the documents that I would like the superintendent to provide us. The out-of-district placement, what's happening with special ed, have those costs skyrocketed given the circumstances? Have parents become frustrated and look for out-of-district placement? But I don't want us as a town or as a committee to back off our commitment to providing the funding for a quality education for the children in Whitman and Hanson. And that's all I have to say right now.
Yeah, thank you, Kathleen. Yeah, I think it's not only a travesty that the superintendent isn't providing an audience for the Whitman Finance Committee just because of the fact that Hanson isn't as prepared or as proactive to get started on fiscal 22 budget. So I appreciate your efforts, and I look forward to getting the list of documents that we need to provide the district in advance of our budget meeting in December. So we'll get the information as soon as we can. I think it's important. Thank you for being on the front lines, Kathleen. Rosemary, then Ken.
Just to clarify, when we're making decisions in general, clearly we don't make them for other towns, but there are guidelines in which we make choices, and we are supposed to represent the public's will. And we have a real cheat sheet. We've had a survey go out that told us the public's will. And I do hope that we take the survey seriously, where the public prioritize schools as a priority out of every single department. And we saw the public's will at this town election when people came out in a pandemic. And I really think that historically, our finance committees and our selectmen have not had the public's ear in mind. They've had their own little ecosystem going on, but not the actual public will. We have to separate ourselves from our friends and everything and make these decisions based on what the public, this isn't our money, this is the public's money. They have given us instructions. We've got documents to guide us this year. This is the easiest finance committee ever in a sense, because we have the Madden report, we have, the surveys, to go by. So I hope that everybody gets on board and acts in the public's best interest. This isn't political. This is, this isn't politics in a negative way. It's politics in a positive way with all this great stuff to go by. That's all.
Thanks, Rosemary. Ken?
I was just saying I have to run. So can I email you with updates that we had to the Article 2 since I last sent it to you on Monday?
Okay, and the updates consisted of what, Ken? Just quickly.
There's a library position that Marcy wanted to add, a custodial position that's part-time. I've put that in the Article 2 copy that I have. I emailed Kathleen Woodward in Recreation and went over her position, or not her position, but the items that should be covered out of the revolving funds. So some lines in her budget will probably go down because I think that money was put in Article 2 by mistake.
Okay.
And the ATA position was level funded down to, it was level funded and it wasn't in the file that I sent you yesterday. So those are 3 changes that happened since I emailed that file to you yesterday morning.
Okay, very good, Ken. Thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing that, and I'll get it out to the committee as soon as you send it to me.
Okay,
Thanks for tuning in.
thank you.
Okay, so on the agenda, we also are keeping the place setter for non-mandated busing. As I said, I did speak a little bit to Don Byers about the fact that we'd like to see that stay on the, at least on a burner. And, we realized the savings and we got reimbursed for the non-mandated busing line for the unused portion of the line that was reimbursed to the district. So, I mean, there's been some outreach to the parents about busing, and this is obviously an unusual year. The outreach should be the basis of how we build on getting the components to put together some type of a study to find out if in fact, we want to support a pay-to-ride program. We're looking for, ways to free up some budget money. This is a difficult year, as it has been for the last several. So I think by not working on this issue now, we're going to put it off, and until we get to the point where someone says, well, this isn't an issue for now, it's something that has to be discussed at the beginning of the year. So this is it. This is the time to get the discussion going. So I hope maybe that could be part of the discussion with the district in December as well. So if anybody has some thoughts, please, get them together for that meeting. So, Lisa, did you have anything you wanted to talk about from Selectmen's meeting?
Good evening, everybody. Let's see. The tax rate for the town, they had a joint meeting with the Board of Assessors. The tax rate has been voted at $15.50 per $1,000 of valuation. And they've voted to stay with a single tax rate across the board and not to change the tax rate between residential, commercial, industrial, and personal property. So that was one good thing. As far as excess levy capacity, they have calculated the excess levy capacity at $10,950.65. And let's see. That was about it as far as the financial. And then we talked about the Community Preservation Act passing through the town election, which is excellent for the town. I think we're going to be able to see some really excellent projects that are going to be funded with that money that normally we wouldn't have any money to fund. And it's going to be a lot of fun work for us, for the getting all the pieces in order, so to speak, so that we're ready to go July 1 of fiscal year 22. And like I said, I think we're going to see some great projects come from that that vote. That's about it.
Excellent. So just to let the board know, I did have a conversation with Lisa earlier today, just to go over a few things as I had expected that she wouldn't have been able to join us because of the selectmen's meeting. But one of the things that we talked about was the strategic plan. It was discussed at last week's Board of Selectmen's meeting. It's something I think that this committee could benefit greatly from the development of the strategic plan. As it was discussed in the Board of Selectmen, I mean, we have done a lot of the work. We have a lot of the pieces already assembled. It's just a matter of pulling it all together. So it did seem from the discussion at the Board of Selectmen last week that it seemed to be moving, away from the commitment to utilize the $15,000 that we have earmarked for a consultant to get this underway. So hopefully it can move forward. Lisa, nothing was discussed about that at tonight's meeting.
Yeah, so I received two proposals. One of the proposals that I had received from one of the companies, basically for a strategic plan, for the budget that we had set, they kind of said that, we could put some workshops together. They were working on a strategic plan for the town of Westboro and said that they were in the amount of about $78,000. However, I've had some discussions with another consultant who she's gone basically down a different road and said, for the budget that we have in place, she would be able to put all of the studies that we've had into some type of a document, and then just go from there. So one company kind of gave us a little bit of a disappointment, but this other company is saying yes, we can definitely do something that's solid with the information that we have with the budget that we have set aside. So I'm in the process now of trying to deliver to her our survey that Rosemary talked about, our housing production plan. We have a master plan that's a little old, but they can still work with that. They're large files, so I'm just working with Josh to get those over to her, and then she's going to start putting the information together for us. So it's a work in progress, but I think they're going to generate something that'll be very, very good that we can be proud of.
Great. Well, if there's anything you need from the input from the Finance Committee, we'd be more than happy to help. Kathleen?
Yeah, Lisa, I just have a quick question for you. It's off topic, and if you don't have the information now, that's fine. But this time last year, we were talking about both towns, Hanson and Whitman, funding a forensic audit of the schools.
Mm-hmm.
I know COVID is in place, but life goes on. Has the forensic audit started, or is that something that money was appropriated but nothing's being done?
No, actually, it's funny because I had a conversation with John Stanbrook just the other day about moving forward with it. And basically, when COVID hit, everything kind of came to a halt. And then with Frank announcing his retirement. So we had a conversation, and I haven't heard from anybody that has had a change of heart that this audit should not go forward. So he did reach out to the company that provided a proposal, to see if they were still on board with moving forward with the audit. And I'm still waiting. I'm just waiting to hear back from him on the response from the company.
Okay.
So it's been something that we've kind of resurrected.
Great. Okay, John?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but we never appropriated that money. If I recall, we discussed it. We had a kind of a straw poll that we're all in favor of it, but I don't think we ever transferred it from anywhere. It was never in town meeting. So I don't know that, you know, I mean, I think we're all in favor of it, but I don't think we officially ever did.
Kathleen?
As I recall, initially the cost was going to require a reserve fund transfer, and I explicitly remember this meeting. And when Frank came back to discuss the final cost of the proposal, he was not going to be requesting any money from the reserve fund. There was money available. Now, I don't know what that means from a town administrator's point of view, but there was money available to fund what I think was going to be a $20,000 expense, not a $60,000 expense. So it didn't require any action on the board of the finance committee.
Yes, from what again, you know, Frank kind of kept that in his corner, and I'm just kind of remembering what I heard of the conversation. So the proposal for the audit came in under what they thought it was going to as far as budget. And I do recall Frank saying that he had money that he could move around from some other accounts, some other appropriations. I have to find the notes to see where that was, because that was something that happened a little while ago. So I will have to refresh my memory on where that was, you know, where he was looking to move that money from.
So if you can get that information to me, I'll make sure I distribute it to the committee when you find out exactly what is available and the funding source that was used.
Right, I have to find his notes to see where, you know, where he was looking at from where the funding sources were going to be.
Okay. John.
Wouldn't that be a line item transfer, and wouldn't that require finance committee approval and selectmen approval? And is that even possible now? That I thought there was a window that only line items can happen only at the end of the year and at the very beginning of the year. So I'm not sure how that would work as far as moving money around. It's just an odd term, I think.
I think what we're looking to find out is if it has already been done.
Well,
That's what I think is.
how would it have been done if we didn't approve the line item transfer? I guess it just seems odd, that's all. I think the whole thing seems odd as far as how that all went down, and that's why I raised it up. I don't think we ever acted on it, and I don't think the money's been appropriated.
Okay.
That's all I'm thinking.
Yeah, so I mean, that may be something that we need to do. Like I said, I was not a part of that process when it was taking place. You know, I was where I'm sitting today, so I'm sorry that I don't have all the exact answers, but you know, the question was resurrected, and I believe people still want to move forward with the audit. If need be, we can wait and we can include that as an article on our next annual town meeting, if that's the will of the boards.
Did Rick get frozen?
Nope.
Rick looks like he's frozen, doesn't he?
Looks like he's frozen.
It's a very stoic look for Rick, though, isn't it? Yeah, I'd have to say Rick is frozen. He hasn't jumped.
Well, it was one of those moments where you're kind of waiting for him to say something.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It looks very stoic, and he hasn't jumped out, so he's still on the call, but he's definitely frozen. Oh, now he's jumped out.
All right. Okay.
All right, he's going to come back in a second.
You know, I just want to say that, you know, I appreciate any patience. Of course, there's still a transition in this. You know, Frank was 95.9% into the budget and with all of this, and I'm working through the transition and trying to get caught up on as many things as I possibly can. So I apologize if I don't have the answers right away, but I will work to get them.
I think that Kathy was clear. If you have it, you know, I don't know.
Right, exactly. Right.
She didn't expect it, just if you had it on hand.
And Rick hasn't come back yet.
Lisa, could I ask you a question?
Sure.
You mentioned electronic files that you would be sending to whoever the vendor would be, who was offered to put a package together for us.
Yep.
Would this include items like the Madden report and the Carroll Center report.
Yes,
And
it's going to include the survey that we had done by Dr. Melinda Tarsi. It will include the capital improvement plan that was done by the Collins Center. It will include the budget document. It will include our housing production plan that was just a draft that was done by OCPC. It's going to include our 2004 master plan. So she's going to be getting a lot of different documents and studies that we've had done.
is this information that's available within the town's intranet system? The reason I ask is obviously I'm brand new, and I hear references, I've seen references on some of the other Zoom recordings to the Madden report says this, or the Carroll Center report says that. And I'd like the opportunity to take a look at those. And you mentioned how big the files were. I was just wondering if there's any way of reading them online.
Well, let me see. What I can do is I can look and see what we have. Like I said, the housing production plan was not adopted by the planning board. So that is just a draft. So that would not be online for folks to look at. The Madden report should be there. It may be under the town administrator section of the website. The 2004 master plan, I don't believe that is on the website anymore because of its age. We will have to work to update that at one point because obviously 2004 is quite a long time ago. The capital improvement plan, I believe that may be under the town administrator report as well. And the budget document that we had done, that was, hold on one moment. For fiscal year 2021. So that should be under town administrator as well. But I'll double check and see if those have made it onto the website.
Well, that just the Madden report and the Carroll Center report seem to be something that people bring up pretty continuously. And so if possible, it would be great if I could start there.
John, I just forwarded you the Madden report, so you should have it in your email.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
The other report is a big file. I'll see if I can find that too. I do have a copy of it. Whether or not it'll go out via email or not, I don't know. But the Madden report, there were 3 documents that I just emailed you.
Terrific. Thank you, John.
Lisa, quickly, for the 2004 report, what do you think you're going to be using in it? The wetlands, or what elements do you think they could be using? I did read it. That was the one you lent me for that.
Yeah, so they may be able to use as far as what our restrictions are as far as our economic development, because Whitman has such a large area of wetlands. That restricts a lot of our development because of the environmental restrictions. So they will look at that because the economic development will be one area that they're going to touch on. As far as that, and as far as our residential, of course, we think we're built out, but then somebody finds some land to add some more growth, which is never a bad thing. And then they'll probably maybe just she could compare the demographics that were used in the master plan from 2004 to the housing production plan that we just had done. And again, that is only a draft. It was not adopted by the planning board. So it's not going to go anywhere as far as being public because it's not a finished document that's adopted. But she'll look at that and she'll extract some of the data from that as well. Welcome.
Thank you.
John, I just forwarded you all the files that I had for the Collins report too. There were 5 of them. Some of them may not be part of the final report, but most of them should be, there's a lot to that. So I'm not I'm not real familiar with that part of it. So Dave Cordero, who's not here tonight, it's his committee that is in charge of that, the building finance. He may be a better resource on that. Justin Evans knows, the selectman also knows a lot about that as well.
So quickly, Rick just text messaged, his internet went down. Have John close the meeting when we've finished.
Okay.
Thanks. So I don't think he's going to be able to get back in.
Okay.
It looks like, but whoever, you know, maybe Ralph or Chuck are going to head it. They're our senior
Yeah.
members.
Yeah.
So they're
Well,
just-
Chuck's an officer, so I think Chuck takes over.
Yeah, Chuck takes over.
You're in
All
charge
right.
now, buddy.
All right.
Get gavel.
Poor Rick.
Just
We
quickly,
miss him.
what did everybody in the committee? I mean, did Kathy didn't receive some of these things, so maybe everything you're emailing, John, you should be emailing to the whole committee if you don't mind.
Oh, sure.
That would,
Yeah,
just
actually,
in
I'd like
case-
that, John.
Yeah, just so that we're all on the same page. And I'm glad that you
sorry, I
did.
thought
Thank you for
everybody
doing
had
that
it.
because it get John up to speed on that. And when you're emailing the Collins report, are you emailing the Collins report for salaries? We're not using that anymore. Is that correct, Lisa? I think they had we did 2 Collins reports.
Right, we did the Collins report for the capital improvement plan, and we did the classification study, and that was back in, 2016 and 2017. I believe Frank did put that all together for everybody. I'll see if I can get that out as well. He was not happy with the way that report came out, and was going to try and redo it, have it redone, but he never got to do that. So what we'll try and do is I'll try and get that study out that they did. And like I said, it's hard to follow, but it's something that we have that was done through the Community Compact Grant.
Have we updated the numbers to where we are in salaries now, just to get a sense of things on that document, or?
No, none of the numbers have been updated.
I wonder if we could do that. That way we're sort of at least, you know, we have something to go by. Just the thought, or get it where we want it to be at least.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Lisa.
All right, John, your emails just came through. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Um,
Yeah,
all right,
well,
well,
you can make heads or tails of those. I mean, especially the Collins documents. I just gave you everything that I had. Some of those are
Yeah.
older documents than others, so.
Yeah. It'd be a good refresher because I remember having the paper version of the Madden a while back, or seeing it somewhere. But having it online on the computer will help out immensely. Well, I'll do like Rick said. At this point, any other new business?
Oh, the
That anybody wants
survey.
to bring
Did
up?
you send him the survey?
I don't have the survey.
Okay, Lisa, is there any way that we could get information from that survey, or should we go
Yes.
back and review that?
Yeah. No, I can get that out to you.
I appreciate that. That
I
way
have a-
we're all working on the same page of what the public will is.
Mm-hmm.
We have to guess.
I have something in old business, Chuck, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, John.
I just wanted to follow up on our discussion last week with the police, the vehicle, the $60,000 that got put into the Article 2. And, it was discussed last week that was the recommendation of the Madden report, since we're talking about the Madden report. But I just wanted to remind everybody that Mr. Madden was actually pretty specific on specifically the police, replacing the police cars. He recommended that that's something that we should do, but he actually commented that that was probably something we weren't in a position to do right away. Now, we were able to do it last year because we had some pretty, we had some extra revenue last year that we were one-time revenue that we're not going to have this year. So we were able to include it in Article 2 last year. But I think just for us to consider that, not only that, but, we're talking about the ambulance and things like that, that those are all things that Madden said ideally we'd want to have inside of Article 2, but it may take us a couple of years to get there. So for the, for the replacing the police vehicle, for instance, that's $60,000. Maybe we may need to do it the way we used to do it, which was I think we did them as 3-year leases or something.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, it was
So it's just
lease purchase.
something to consider, and just reminding everybody that was the case. I just happened to be going back and looking at that, and I wanted to bring it up in this meeting.
So
Yeah.
just quickly, where we're going over the Madden report and recommendations. And I'm going to be reviewing some of the meetings because we postponed an override last year that was needed because, so we would need it to this year. And, when we're including these things, what we haven't spoken of that. When we're talking about the recommendations, I'm wondering, can we put a place marker for everybody's budget, and anybody who goes over, we consider possibly doing, if we are going to do an override, which the override committee said we were, anybody who's going over would have that section for an override, essentially. So it's a combined override if needed, and that people would really have to think about what they needed, because most likely a big override won't go through. Past those recommendations. Any thoughts on that?
So are you thinking like if that was going to be the case, more or less putting it out there so it would be an override for any department that needed it, more like not just the schools or one or the other, so people could be singling out? Is that what you're trying to get across?
But well, say the schools are 5%. Everybody who goes above what they're set, the set amount that they're given, that goes into an override number, right? So, if the people don't want it, the people don't want it, and they're going to have to force their budgets back. But at least we know that we're growing at that rate. That was my thought, and that was my understanding of how to move forward. Of course, there's some flexibility, but not at 7 points. I mean, percentages.
Yeah. There's already
not
some high
doubling
numbers.
the amounts. And if it's needed, it's needed. I mean, we have COVID, we have other things going on that are serious, but they really have to think about, will it pass, and what they really are going to have when it's all together. So there's no singling out. There's no take it from your largest budget and pray it works. And some of the statements made last week was the schools were able to get more than less than 5%. Well, they use their E&D money. I mean, I can't really do that. So they're going to have to replenish that. They're going to have to do all kinds of things that. So I don't know if that's the best way to go forward and say, I don't think we should be guessing at the school budget right now. I think we should be hearing from what they need. So, and also just a recognition, Article 2 is the finance committees. It is not a single finance committee members. It is not a selectmen's. It is exclusively the finance committee document. So just any individual shouldn't be changing numbers or determining like that. In the future, it undermines the whole committee, and it undermines the document and the oversight of the committee. So I hope that people keep that in mind.
I think specifically you're talking to me, Rosemary.
No, I'm not actually.
And I think comments that I made to Ken and Ken,
well, you shouldn't be making those comments. You are not the school liaison.
I'm not. All I did is give him an opinion on something, and and he made a mistake in entering something that he thought was helping the budget. So
did you talk to Kathy before making that opinion? She is the liaison to school.
I don't need to talk to Kathy to make my own opinion. I can make my opinion.
I do think that as a committee,
if my opinion
as a committee,
is that
we should be working together.
If I have an opinion that the Hanson school committee members are going to do a certain thing, that's my opinion, and I'm free to tell that to anybody I want to tell that to.
Okay.
And I was not directing.
It did affect an Article 2 that was not exclusive.
It was a mistake made by the town accountant. Okay, that he made it.
Yeah.
He took something. There was no direction given to him to change that. Okay?
Yeah, John. Yeah, I agree, John. If I may.
I take offense, Rosemary, that you do these little tiny, little
No, that's actually
comments
not true,
to try to
John.
jab at
John,
people, and that's a mistake,
that's not
Rosemary.
true, John.
That's
I'm
exactly what
sorry
you
if
did,
feel that way.
Rosemary.
It's about procedure.
No,
The
exactly.
procedure,
and I-
John,
All
I'm
right.
sorry you feel that way.
Um,
It's about
I have a
procedure.
gavel.
Kathy is that,
Yes, do it. Thank you.
I have a gavel. All right, this is a discussion for another time. As Rick would say, remember the Article 2 is a work in progress. That can change up until the last minute. I understand Kathy and Rosemary's concern. I understand Ken is a great resource, but he's kind of just learning how we do things. I think he was just doing something where he thought he was helping, and everybody has their own opinion and they are free to express it any time. Like Rick says, we're a committee of 9 with everybody having their own ideas and their own thoughts, but we work well together. So I think we all know that things will be all right. We'll be working these numbers out until the end, just like it does every year. With that said, on the docket next week, Rick has, it looks like we have treasurer, collector, and clerk. I think some of those budgets came out recently. I remember seeing them on some of my in my emails. So why don't we? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make
And
Second.
second. Okay.
Second.
All right. With that said, I appreciate everybody's time. I know Rick does too. We missed you, Rick. And we'll see everybody next week.